I'm the president of the Merrillville Town Council, and welcome to our second tax talk. We did one a few months ago, and it was a town tax talk, and we learned about taxes and our budget. And actually, our interim town manager, Michael Griffin, was a presenter at that particular presentation. We had a panel up here to answer questions. This one is going to be a little different format. It's going to feature our police department. And so I get the honor and pleasure of introducing our police chief, Kosta Nuses.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming out and showing up. This is one of those things that I think is a great opportunity for us, especially for the police department. I've often had talks with many people. I've often had talks with many of the council members. And one of the greatest things that I've always wanted to do is shed light onto how the police department operates, transparency. And with that, it kind of gives people an idea why we are so expensive. People often joke and say, how much money can it cost to operate a police department? In the reality of things, it's very expensive. The other intention I had on this was if I can get the transparency of how things work, the inner workings of our police department as far as the finances go, I can get a bigger team. It's often said that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. That's something that I'm a big proponent of. The more the merrier. If I have a big team backing me, and in team I mean the residents of Merrillville, then I'm more likely to have some type of a successful outcome, So this is my intention. I want to give everybody kind of an idea and break things down of the divisions of the police department, what they actually do. And as a help for me, I've brought along my patrol commander and my detective commander, and they can give more intricate details. Also, they can answer questions if anybody else has any questions that I don't answer or they don't answer. And this is what the goal is for tonight. So thank you once again. Are we going to do the history? Mr. Yes. Would you like to do?
Yes, it's set up for me, and I'll introduce myself.
Yes. At this time, I'd like to introduce Town Manager Michael Griffin.
Thank you very much. Thank you. He left out my title as interim, but he's always hinting like that. Thank you for that kindness. Very good. Welcome to this. I'm going to try to be quick with my portion of the presentation because the real meat is what the police chief and the associate commanders are going to present to you today, and I'm excited about listening to it as well. But we thought it would be interesting to see how police departments got to be where they are today. Most of what influences government in the United States still is influenced by our British antecedents, because after all, we began as a series of colonies that were subjects of the Great British Crown, and then we sort of got mad at them not treating us like real subjects, and we had to open a can of whoop-you-know-what on them and make our own country, and that's what we did. And so what we did is we still modeled our police work after them. We didn't have really modern police departments until the beginning of London's modern police department, and the oldest police department in our experience in the United States is Boston's police department. But let's talk about Bobby Peeler. Those 3 badges, by the way, represent the departments that are the older police departments in the country. Bobby Peeler was Robert Peeler, actually, and Robert Peel was somebody who believed in public safety. In London at the time, they had a constable and watch system, which basically said you'd hire the biggest, brutish, most unpleasant person who was the strongest person, who could put down trouble when he saw it. And you'd pay him basically to watch the night. So the daytime constable would be a little bit easier to control because everybody was up. The nighttime constable, and remember, we didn't have gaslight everywhere at the time. You know, we take for granted that it seems like daytime at nighttime because we have street lights. There weren't any then. So the nighttime constable had to be even more brutish and mean. Now the difficulty with that was they weren't reliable. Why? Sometimes they'd fall asleep on the job. And sometimes if they were there to thwart a robbery, the robbers would pay them more than the town was paying them, so they'd let them alone, and they would do it. It was just transactional. We didn't really want that, did we? So the early 19th century we sort of contracted constable and watch systems, even in the United States. But we liked the idea of what Robert Peeler did, and what became the Bobbies, named for him, in the Metropolitan Police Department of London, sometimes called Scotland Yard, became the model for a lot of places. Now, let me give you a little bit of idea about what it was like under a Peeler, because he made rules that were strict that they had never had before. For example, you had to be aged between 20 and 27, at least 5 foot 7 inches tall, and as near as possible fit, literate, and have no history of any wrongdoing. I think that's pretty reasonable, don't you? We've gotten a little stricter since then. The fitness starts the same, and I think our height deals, we allow you to be not younger, however, than 21. Now, early Victorian police worked 7 days a week, and they got £1 a week, and they had 5 unpaid holidays a year. See, we treat you better than that. And the first of Peel's police dressed in blue tailcoats and top hats, not the kind of British bobby hat that you see them in now. Top hats like they were going out to the show or to the theater. Well, that didn't work so much. But they began to formally patrol the streets in 1829, in fact, September 29th in 1829, and eventually they got the soldier helmet because they thought they needed it to be taken more seriously. Now, Peelers had the strict rules, which we just talked about. They did their jobs and they looked like that. See the top hats? And then they went to that. And you'll notice that the chevron ranks looked a lot like what we do today, because one of the things that the Peelers felt was important was to have a system of hierarchy and command modeled after the military. So we didn't call them just commanders, and we call them not supervisors. We used titles like sergeants and inspectors and commanders. And even today, modern police departments still use for their badge of rank borrowed emblems from the military that often have a designation. We still don't call them supervisors necessarily in the police department. If they are a supervisor, they also have a special rank associated with it, like sergeant or lieutenant and the like. I already explained the daytime constable and the volunteer night watchman. And by the way, cities and towns got very upset over that. It got to be unreliable. And for populations to grow and for cities to grow and to be safe, we had to add more lighting. And we came up with the idea of modeling ourselves to avoid this. Not reliable availability unless we paid them well. Because remember, the night watchman was just a volunteer. Sometimes we gave them a badge to show that they were official, but sometimes they would dress any way they wanted. So how did you determine who was the law enforcement person from the offender that they were trying to bring to justice? But I told you about all of that stuff. The unreliability, the not consistency, the absence of training brought us to this. The early elements were, and Peeler actually started this as well, they're going to be organized as a hierarchy based on the military model, and they'd be accountable. We would give them regular uniforms, much like you see. These are people in command in many departments. The chiefs would be in a suit. We also have a commander on the far end who's the commander of investigations or the detective bureau. They very often are in plain clothes. And the patrol commander often wears the uniform of the people he commands in patrol. Tonight, because the chief said so, I love that part, they're all in uniform because they fundamentally want you to know, even though they're doing administration and law enforcement, they still are fundamentally police officers. They wear regular uniforms. And here was the idea. Salus, the word that informs salary in Latin, was what the day's wages were for a soldier in the Roman army. Well, we kind of treat it like that a little bit. We called it a salary, and we paid a regular salary so that we didn't have this high bidder thing going on where we needed somebody to be apprehended. And that's why regular salaries are given to police officers, to make them more reliable, to make them believe that they could have a career, and to create professionalism. And I love telling stories about Teddy Roosevelt. Before he was president, he was a governor, and before he was the governor of New York, he was a member of their Board of Metropolitan Police Commissioners of the city of New York, and he was very involved in it. One of the things he was surprised to find out that in New York City at the time, the second oldest of our police departments in close proximity to Philadelphia, but New York City's got the most storied history. In fact, the federal government, before we had an FBI, used the police department in New York, and you know it housed our first seat of government, before we officially moved to DC. The police department in New York City didn't train they would equip you with a uniform, a salary, and a gun. And then they expected you to know how to use it. Now, I'm going to share this with you. I think I'm really good with a pen. I'm not bad with a computer, and I can put a sentence together. But you don't want me to have a gun. I know what they look like, and I fired them a couple of times, but you don't want me aiming at somebody when you're nearby, because you'd be praying very hard that I either had a no gun with bullets or that I aimed differently, because I'm not that precise. It also made then Commissioner Roosevelt aghast. You mean you give these people weapons and we don't train them? What are you thinking? So he got a lot of reforms instituted to train people on the weapons we give them, thankfully. Also improving the uniforms, doing things that kind of modeled both what they did in Germany, eventually for universities too, and in London, to make career tenure. We think you should have a career. If you believe law enforcement is your calling, you should be able to have a career, regardless of who's elected. Now, we haven't done that perfectly in the history of the United States, but generally we've tried to make that the case. So we believe in career tenure, and that you could have a career by merit, not by patronage. Because after all, even if they become friends of the elected officials, you want to believe that they were exercising a kind of judgment where you can rely on them to protect you. And look how fit every one of them are. I'm so glad that I have, a better skill with a pen. I do not want to ever take these people on and be on their business end of them delivering law enforcement services. But pistol schools became what became eventually academies. Indiana modeled themselves against that as well. They like to have their police departments to be like that. Under Indiana law, every incorporated entity, you first start as a town, whether you become a city later on or not, and every town has to start with a town marshal. Now, I think it's kind of hip because, I grew up as a kid who liked watching Marshall Dillon, and I thought marshals were a cool thing to be. I'm going to embarrass myself but tell you this true story. When I was a little boy going to church, I always had to wear a sport coat, but I had a Mattel Snub-Nose 38 that I would wear as a shoulder holster under my shirt, so I'd be just like Jack Webb. I have no skill set for that, by the way. But I really admired police officers. They have to do some of our most difficult things and always be brave and treat us with the kind of courtesy we always want to expect. They have to be social workers. They have to go into domestic disputes. They have to pull us over and still be polite. They have to know the constitutional law. They have to know the laws of the state. And they have to do it always. Have I said polite 3 times or not? We asked them to do a lot. We also asked them to make snap judgments in the middle of deciding whether or not they want to go home. It is the goal of every elected official. Councilman Pettit, also the other members of the council, our council president Bella, and as interim town manager, but everybody who's preceded me and everybody's going to come after me. We'd like every one of our people to retire healthy and well after a long career in our police department. And we want them to go home from every shift safe. Yet we know we ask them to do our most difficult work, and it's not safe work. So we're committed to keeping them equipped that way. So we give them continuing education. The state of Indiana says we must give them that. The board that manages that says they have to have at least 24 hours of training before the continuing ed as police officers, in addition to being academy trained in the traditional sense, to become eligible to enforce the law in Indiana. They also we have to make them do social work. They help strangers find their way, because you can regard nobody as a stranger. Sometimes they used to be in the business of unlocking cars. I think most police departments have gotten out of that. Firstly, we thought it looked bad for them to know how to break into a car. We didn't think that was good marketing. We shouldn't have people know how to do that are supposed to enforce the law. But more importantly, there's a lot of businesses out there that make it reasonable. We're very happy to call somebody on your behalf that can come out and let you in, but they'll keep you safe while you're waiting. So we don't get that service, but we often have to give strangers directions and be many cases, the first people you see that are employed by the town or city. Not me, not our elected officials, often our police department. Just seeing them drive by pleasantly. Maybe you're seeing them drive by quickly to apprehend somebody. And perhaps sometimes you're seeing them in your rear view mirror, perhaps having to remind you of our speed laws as well. They also have to be specialists. Every one of them has an opportunity to get specializations at a crime scene. They have to know the criminal constitutional law, how to secure a crime scene, and make sure the evidence is preserved so that the evidence doesn't become the difficulty in a criminal prosecution. Now, as I shared with you before, the first permanent police was 1838 in the city of Boston. Their badge has not been changed since then very much. They like the idea of the tradition. I showed you those at the beginning. The next permanent police force was New York City, and New York City really has a storied history. They have both equal opportunities and equal history of reforming police, improving forensics, using fingerprints, doing criminal justice with science, as well as corruption, unfortunately. But we've learned from their model not to be like them when it comes to corruption, but to be like them when it came to using police and forensic science. New Orleans and Cincinnati were the next forces in 1853. So policing is pretty old in the country here. You know that the town of Merrillville is 51, 52 years old. Our incorporation date was in 71, December 31st. And our police department has been around basically since then. We weren't always a metropolitan police department. As I told you, police departments start in towns as marshal services. Most of the police departments that are still in town government, which just is a structural difference, we're all equal as municipalities. We just are structured differently. They all start as marshals. I'm trying to think of one that's still, Chesterton is still a marshal system, although they still call him a police chief. He's technically the marshal. He's a police chief because we formed the Metropolitan Police Department shortly after we were incorporated here. And the reason was that is the idea was to make it more professional. Instead of having the police department chiefs and members directly appointed by the town council, they now appoint the members of the board that manages them. They still have a say in the regulations of the department, the qualifications to be a chief or a police officer and civilian. The idea was to take it away. They even have their oaths administered to them by the circuit court clerk in every county that there's a metropolitan police department to make them less influenced by the politics that can unduly influence law enforcement. Now, I've been here a little over a month. I don't see that kind of stuff going on. I think you've been blessed, Merrillville. I'm kind of an outsider, although I'm totally an insider now, who comes in and tells you that your elected people have tried very hard to give them what they needed to do the job of keeping us safe and to let them be operational like a professional group of public officials, police officers. And that's the whole goal of tonight. So, I did want to tell you a little bit about property taxes. In my earlier life, I did public finance for 30 years and 37 days, and it doesn't leave you easily because it is still part of the job as an interim town manager or a regular one. But I wanted to remind you of this. As of 2023, if you're a taxpayer in the civil government of Merrillville, you pay 20 cents for every dollar of property tax that you pay for Merrillville government. And that 20 cents includes debt service and a little bit for police. So of the 20 cents, probably 5 cents, and that's high, is for the police department. And that would not be enough to deliver what we do for you, but I wanted you to show that they really are a bargain. The chief is going to tell you that they're expensive. He's being a good chief and a good executive trying to share you with that, but it is kind of a bargain. The concept here is that state law makes it harder for us to pay people to do jobs for us. They give us all kinds of powers to build buildings to put them in and cars they can drive. He'll explain that to you in his portion of this. But I thought you'd like to see all the things that go into that. Isn't that interesting? I always love knowing that. That is the general fund as it looks today. There's 69 different funds, I believe, that we try to budget for you, and there's more than that in the town of Merrillville. The general fund is the most important one. It's the one that we put the operating property taxes in and a little bit for police pensions. And as you can see, each department, nearly half of the general fund budget is the police. See it down there? Is there a pointer on this? I don't think I need it. I can show you at the very bottom. $5,505,000. That does, by the way, I knew that where that discrepancy was, Chief. There was carryover that was encumbered for you in the start. I'm showing you what the budget order said. So it's a little bit, maybe there's about maybe another 100,000 more on that. That has to be supported by a tax levy of $7.7 million and other revenues based on 2023's or 2022's collect. What they estimated was 3.1, but actually we estimate low. You're probably going to come within $50,000. You're funded and very close to balance. There's not a lot of other ways to pay for police, by the way. That's what property tax are for. That's why all 50 states of the United States and the District of Columbia, believe it or not, have property taxes. The most regressive tax, to be sure, but it's reliable in a variety of economic cycles. And that's good because you don't want to call the police department and say, you know, we had an economic downturn, so we had to lay some people off. Tell us how bad it is, and we'll see if we should send somebody. Could you handle it until we get there? You don't want that, do you? Or you don't want to call and say, hey, I got a really bad fire at my house. Well, is it something you can do with your hose, or do you need us because we had an economic downturn? Regardless of the economic cycle, you're going to get police service. That's the whole point of this. Although we struggle because there's so many demands, and we can only grow the property tax levy under law so big. I hope you enjoyed that part. I'm eager to see the rest of it, which is the meat of it anyway. I'll answer questions at the end, maybe. I thought I found that. But now let's welcome Chief Kosta Nuses, who is the Executive of Law Enforcement in the town of Merrillville. Congratulations, Chief. Just push the button and be next.
Thank you once again. I'm going to start off by kind of giving a brief explanation of what is policing exactly. By definition, police is an institution of the state that is responsible for the detection and prevention of crime. Police also provide a protection of the safety, security, and peace of whatever town they are patrolling or responsible for. So, us as the Merrillville Police Department, we are responsible for the whole town of Merrillville and anything within our boundaries. We are responsible not only for the residents, but we are also responsible for those visiting us. We're responsible for those shopping here. We're responsible for pretty much anybody that sets foot. So that leads me to the next thing as far as what is policing exactly. Policing are activities that are carried out by the police to maintain law and order while providing safety, security, and peace to the communities they serve. What exactly does that mean? Activities that we carry out daily is patrol. One of the activities. We're patrolling the streets. We're there to monitor and enforce any type of traffic enforcement. We're there to discourage crime. We're there to try and prevent crime. And we are there to handle a crime after it's been committed and catch the people that committed the crime. This is one of the most important things that we offer as police, and this is my best description of what policing is. We provide the safety, and by safety I mean, to piggyback on what I said, was traffic enforcement. If you have people that are, if you had no police, it would be a free-for-all on the roads. You would have people going 100 miles an hour or as fast as they can get their cars to go. We actually do enforce that. We prevent that, and if we do see somebody that is violating, we stop them. Sometimes we issue warnings, other times we issue tickets. That is an important part. Another portion of us providing safety is if we see something that could potentially be dangerous to somebody, we get out and we take care of it. We make sure that it is not a hazard to anybody in the public. Security, again, it all falls back. We make sure that we're there to make sure to, we want to make sure that everybody has everybody's property, everybody's belongings, everything is secure. That goes back also to the peace. We want peace. Everybody's entitled to have peace. Everybody that lives here, it's their piece of their property. They're entitled to be peaceful there. They're entitled to have a secure home. They're entitled to be peaceful when they go out and they shop. They're entitled to be peaceful and secure when they're sleeping at night. So these are all amongst the functions that we do in policing. So the Merrillville Police Department has a couple different divisions, and these are what I'd like to go over. In regards to sworn officers, we are budgeted for 61 sworn officers right now. Within the police department, you have the patrol division. The patrol division is the backbone of the police department. Of course, that's who everybody sees, the black and whites, or now we have the new design that we're kind of fading away from the black and whites. That's the initial deterrent. That is what people see and think twice about wanting to do anything wrong or wanting to watch their speed or anything of that nature. The patrol division responds to calls for service, performs the initial investigation for any reported crimes, and maintains order and enforces criminal and traffic laws. So, anytime there's a call for service, whether it's for a wandering animal, somebody in need because they're having some type of a medical emergency, if somebody is in trouble, if there's some type of crime being committed and somebody's a victim, our patrol division is the first one to respond to this. These are what we consider reported crimes. What they do is they go to the scene or they go to the call and they take a report or an initial report. They do their own initial investigation. If further needs to be done, then they present it to the investigations, or also known as the Detective Bureau. And then they handle that. I'm going to get into that a little bit more, but I'm also going to have my commanders speak on it a little bit further. Then we enforce criminal and traffic laws, of course, as well. So traffic I kind of touched on. Criminal laws, anytime somebody breaks the law or commits a crime against a person or property, we are the ones that are going to handle that. We are the ones that are going to investigate it, or I'm sorry, patrol is going to be the ones that are going to investigate it. Patrol is going to be the ones that are going to determine whether or not that person has committed that crime or they have enough probable cause that they've committed that crime. And then they're going to act accordingly, whether it be take them to jail or give them a court date, however it works out. This time I'll call Commander Josh Miskus up. He's the patrol commander. He's the one that oversees all the functions of our patrol unit. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to answer. He'll give just a little bit further than what I did.
All right. Hello, everyone. First, I'm going to excuse my cough. Kind of prevents me from talking here a little bit, so if I keep coughing, just forgive me here. I think Chief's done a good job as far as laying out kind of what our basic function is in patrol as far as the first responder. So again, anything that happens, patrol is going to be the first officers on scene to try to handle whatever problem's going on. So pretty much I would open it up to any kind of questions anybody has and that maybe I could answer or give a little bit more information on.
The current crime right now is mental health. You have a department that deals with the mental health issue. They're saying 1 out of 3 people now is in trouble for mental health.
We've experienced that here this year and also in the past just a little bit. It's starting to become more and more prevalent.
Commander, I beg your pardon. When we don't have a mic on those people, would you repeat their question? Because we are
Well,
recording this.
What I'd like to do is, I know it's a small crowd, but we are going to record this and post it on the town website. So if you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone to ask your question, that way it'll be on the tape, if you don't mind, or I can even bring it to you. I know you're not shy. Thank you very much.
Now, my question is just about mental health, since that's on the news right now and how prevalent it is in big cities. So do you have to deal with that, and how do you deal with it? Do you have a special department or something?
I would say currently we don't have a special department dedicated just for mental health. We try to handle it as a case-by-case basis when we come upon it, and then it goes through our administrative channels, and then we find help for that officer when they need it. Or are you talking about the public end of it? Public end, we have a pretty bad problem here in Merrillville as far as mental health. We encounter it a lot, especially over at our hotel districts, and unfortunately, it's rough to deal with because our hands are tied. If medics kind of show up on scene, and if they can't determine, well, they're a harm to themselves, if they can't answer basic questions, then there's not much we can do other than kind of address the problem and put a Band-Aid on it and then move along to the next call. So, yep.
Also, just to add to that, mental health has been a huge issue across the country, and one of the things that plagues us as law enforcement agencies here in Indiana, Illinois, all the other ones I'm not exactly sure, but I can tell you what we deal with. We don't have any resources. There are not any resources by the state. There are not any resources by the federal government. There's simply nothing for us to use. So you do have some facilities, but people have to meet a certain criteria, and a majority of them that do need help don't meet that criteria. So here are our options. Take them to the hospital, and that's it. You have some of the other facilities where there has to be an intake done, where they have to be checked out by the actual intake nurse or physician or whoever it would be. And then once it's determined whether or not they need to be admitted, then it comes an issue of how it's going to be funded. So one of the things that we are doing right now, I've worked with the council, and Councilman Bella has been really on me about this, and I'm really happy about it because I think it's a solution. It's not a, I wouldn't say it's a solution, but it's a way to start going in the right direction, and that's seeking the service of a counselor or a social worker. Thank you. And I think that's the right step. And that's like something that's become very popular among some of the departments around us, and we are venturing into that area as well.
Since no one else will ask you guys a question, I'll ask you guys a question. As you guys know, I'm Ward 6. I have the biggest ward in the town, area-wise. And Chief, I appreciate everything you've been able to do out in what we affectionately refer to as the Panhandle. Josh, how do you guys divide up the patrols and the sectors? Because, you know, you get out to Clay and Colorado and Grand and Randolph, and we've got 5 or 6 subdivisions, but they're not as densely populated as, say, you know, Rick's area or Marge Uzelak's area or Mr. Hardaway up north. How do you guys sector in your patrolling on a daily basis?
So we have 4 districts in the town of Merrillville. We have east, west, southwest, and southeast. So east is divided from, the cutoff is 73rd and Madison. So 73rd and Madison east to Mississippi, and then north to Gary is east. West is 73rd and Madison, all the way west to Cherryville, and then north to, it's kind of unincorporated, Griffin and county area. Southwest is 73rd and Broadway, west all the way to Cherryville, and all the way down to 93rd Avenue. So that covers the jail area. Excuse me, that's probably one of our most populated areas because we have a ton of, not hotels, apartment complexes, and we have Route US 30 and a ton of businesses. And then the southeast district starts from 73rd and Broadway, goes all the way east to County Line, and then all the way south to 101st, also to County Line. So southeast is, it's a huge district landmass-wise. Maybe not as populated, but one officer is assigned to each district. So our minimum officers for every shift is 6. So some of our crews have 10 guys or 10 officers on there. Some of our crews have 9. But usually, probably from middle of the year, summer to the end of the year, usually we can have about 6 officers out at a time. And again, one officer is responsible for east, west, southeast, southwest. We may have a central car in there, and then normally a supervisor.
Before I get to my question, I actually wanted to comment on the mental health part because I came to this country in 1984. I moved to New York City with my job. And one of the first things I experienced was that a lot of mental health clinics were closed and the people who resided in them were released. And I happened to be on the Staten Island ferry when this guy with his sword came in and started slaughtering people. So it's not a new thing. It is really something that's been going on for a long time in this country. But my question is there a difference between a police department in a town versus a police department in a city?
I don't think I have any. I don't believe there's any difference. No.
If I may, the reason that they, yes, I'll go. Sorry, Mike. That's okay. The reason that they became a metropolitan police department is to make them equivalent to city and other towns that have metropolitan police departments. It makes them on a par with them. And the laws that apply to cities will all apply to them in Indiana law for organization. It gave them a pension before there was wide pensions for law enforcement in towns and cities. That was one of the advantages of having it. And it gives them that kind of authority that a town marshal does not have. So they may be sized differently and they might have different command structure based on their size, but there's no meaningful difference once the town has a metropolitan police department.
Like our chief had just kind of said that our town, I believe, is one of the biggest in all of Indiana, and it's bigger than some cities that we have around here as well. So I could see that.
I was wondering, how about these big apartment complexes? How much time you spend there? Have to.
We spend a ton of time in these
know.
apartment complexes.
Okay, Pettit. Cut them off.
Bill's got more than I do.
Okay, Bella, cut them off.
We spend a ton of time in the apartment complexes and in our hotel districts. I would say that is a good majority of our calls.
I have more hotels, guys.
It's definitely a strain on our department as far as call-wise, because a lot of times it's not a one-officer kind of call. It's usually 2 or 3 or 4 officers that need to respond there. A lot of times we have a lot of drugs that go through there, a lot of prostitution, violent crime, and again, it's a drain on our department.
So, Josh, could you help explain, is the police calls today of 2022 different from they were 20 years ago?
I would say they have. I've been on for about 15 years, and I think the calls have got probably more violent as far as there's more in need of 2 or 3 officers responding to calls compared to maybe 1 officer responding or even 2. That's I would say. And then again, we're dealing with a lot of drug problems, which you never know what that's going to turn into, more violent crime, and then you also throw in some of the mental health issues that we have to respond to that we're not really, I would say, properly equipped to handle that. So that is, I would say that's the biggest difference, is probably more violent, more officers responding to calls.
To follow up on Rick's question, Josh, do you guys see more crime coming in from out of town? These are not residents necessarily that are committing the crimes as it is out-of-towners that are coming in with the robberies and the drug dealing and, as you alluded to, the hotel things. Is it more out-of-town people coming into town, or it's not really our residents, is it?
I think I could agree with that. The vast majority, this is kind of a transient town that we have, especially with our hotels, that a lot of people from out of town, out of state, will come there. And again, it's a big drug hub that we have, so a lot of crime starts from there, and that kind of goes throughout our town, whether we have, again, drug problems dealing within there, and it just starts reaching throughout all of Merrillville. So yeah, I would agree that a lot of it is from out of town, even in our apartment complex as well. You know, you have some people that they may stay there, but then unfortunately they're part of the criminal organizations that they go in other cities or towns and they bring that trouble back here.
So I understand we have some kind of an ordinance that says, or whatever, fire department ordinance that says they cannot reside in a hotel room for longer than 30 days. At least that's what I read on Facebook, so I'm assuming that's true. So when we follow, like, Merrillville community site on Facebook, we see quite a number of people that'll come out and say, I'm living in this hotel now for the last 4, 5, 6 months, whatever, and I have nothing, and please give me something. And when I look at their profile pages, it says they live in Chicago or in Gary or in Hammond or wherever, but typically not in Merrillville, yet they're in our hotels. How do we actually work these hotels to ensure that they're not overstaying? I mean, I understand if they overstay 2 or 3 weeks, but that they're not overstaying like they actually live in there.
That's a good question. I would say they would have to take cooperation from town officials and the police department, and then probably, what's that? Correct. In order to enforce that, I mean, currently right now, we don't have the manpower to go out there and check in everybody or check to see if everybody's been there for 30 days or moved on. You know, we would like the business owners to do that themselves. So really, I don't have a great answer for that, and I don't know the solution to it.
So why don't we hold the business owner responsible? Because we just heard that the majority of your time is spent just there. So while you don't have the force to take care of that, the preventive health is usually more important and will usually fix issues long-term easier. So why wouldn't we try to hold the business owners responsible by checking their logs, checking what they have, you know, and try to make sure proactively that we're not getting into this kind of scenario?
I'm gonna jump in real quick. Just to touch on that, we do have ordinances that state that they're not supposed to be there for longer than a certain period of time. However, they have all gotten smart, and what some of these hotels are doing is they're giving them a checkout day where they check out at a certain time, and what they will do is they will go to another hotel across the street because they all communicate. It's like a little network, right? So they'll go to the hotel across the street, they'll stay there for a night, and then they go right back to their room and check back in. So technically, they're abiding by the ordinances. But what they've done is they found a loophole. And as Commander Miskus said, that would be extremely difficult for us. We have 25 hotels now. It would be extremely difficult for us to go and check the logs or to check and see who's been booked into the room and how long they've been in there for. The only ones that I could see would be acceptable with some of the workers that come in from out of town. And I know that there is extended stays for that, but some of the other ones, they're living in there. And this is a huge problem for us. And we have tried to enforce it. But like I said, they'll go across the street to the next hotel, they'll stay a night there, and here we go again. We start over for 30 days. So that is something, this whole hotel thing has been it's been almost like a pet peeve for me. I've been looking at every possible option that we can do to start holding these hotel owners accountable. I've looked at every single option to maybe try and get a fee, but based on state and federal laws, it makes it a little difficult. So
I have a recommendation. Again, most people know I'm a property manager as well. So when I look at our leases, or when I look at the housing authorities around us, they all have rules that say cannot exceed so many days in this time frame. So instead of having the 30 days, that should really be like 30 days in a 6-month time frame. And then they couldn't just go across the street one night and come back and meet the requirement. That would be out the window.
So I do think that some of them, I'm not bashing any of the hotels, but there are some that are not very cooperative, but there are some that are. However, they will pick up and sometimes move to the other ones. So believe me that everybody has found a loophole to get away with what they want to do. And that's where we're playing catch up on.
Good evening. I've noticed around my neighborhood the last 3, 4, maybe 5 years, a lot of people walking around that never did that before. And I don't know if there's a recognizable homeless situation here in Merrillville that you folks know of. I don't see anybody sleeping on the sidewalks like you do in cities around the country. But we're getting a lot of people out of state moving in my neighborhood too, and that's changed. A lot of stray dogs in the yard. And, that's another question I have for you. I took my dog out a couple weeks ago, and usually I shoot the stray dogs away because they get in my yard and they pick up the scent of my dog. I got a little 22-pound rat terrier I keep on a leash. And I took him out the garage door, and he got around the house before I did, and there was a pit bull standing in my front yard. And he jerked me he was going into attack mode because those little rat terriers think they're bigger than they are. And that pit bull was just standing there. And I didn't know can you do anything to a dog if you're getting attacked in your yard?
What?
I ended up the dog wouldn't leave. I ended up getting a stick out of my garage and shaking it at him, which is not a good idea, but he finally left. But is there any alternatives? You know what I'm getting at here, guys?
You have the right to defend yourself to make sure you're not injured or your dog's not injured.
Okay, in my yard. I don't mean out in the street or somewhere. 'Cause we all know what pit bulls, they got a bad reputation anyway. But
Correct. And I would say that, if you're actively out in your yard and something happens, you have the right to defend yourself. I wouldn't suggest if you see just a dog in your yard, you go outside and handle it any other kind of way than contacting
Okay.
police. But again, if you're in your yard, you have your dog with you or you have family members with you and they go to attack you, you have the right to defend yourself.
okay, I think that answers what I'm getting at.
Also, another thing, we have 2020 played a big trick on the whole world. Everybody was homebound.
Yeah,
Everybody decided that they wanted to get a dog at that point. And now here we are kind of slowly getting back into the swing of things. And all of a sudden, a lot of these people are now saying, I don't have time for a dog. I can't do this. I got to work. That's their excuse, right? We are seeing record numbers of dogs being dumped throughout the country right now. Dogs get dumped left and right. They're being dumped here. They're being dumped in our neighboring cities and towns. They're being dumped in our neighboring states. It's almost become an epidemic where they can no longer either afford them or they can no longer take care of them. And here they are. We have animal control that's been really good about going and getting them, But when you're getting 5, 6, 7 dogs dumped in a day, how do you keep up with that? The shelters are at their full mark. They can no longer accept any because of this very reason. They're even doing as much as where they're going to vets, some of the local veterinarians here, and they're just tying the dog up to the fence and leaving it there. So this is what we're dealing with. At this point, we don't have an answer. We're going to keep trying to do what we do, but as Commander Miskus said, that you are entitled to defend yourself.
Yeah,
Whether you're in a walk,
call you guys out for a dog.
I understand.
You know, but the people moving in the neighborhood, the flippers come in and buy the houses, and then we got a whole different class of people coming in now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they're letting their dogs run loose, and everybody had dogs in my neighborhood, but they took care of their dogs.
One of the things that we are looking forward to now is we're looking at working on putting together an ordinance that's going to have a hefty fine if you get caught dumping your dog in Merrillville or abandoning your dog. We're gonna come after you with an ordinance.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get it passed. We're also going to file charges. A lot of our LPR or license plate readers are all going to be online here finally soon. So I'm hoping that helps, because often you'll get, hey, I just seen a guy dumping a dog, or I seen a lady dumping a dog. What should I do? Which way did the car go? That way we could kind of get an idea and call them up and say, hey, come get this dog, or we're going to file charges on you. So that's one of the solutions. It's not the answer, but it's something helping us work forward.
You know, I just noticed last week, I think it was, they put speed bumps between 73rd Avenue and Route 30 there, right there in that little dip in the road by that stop sign. Is that for speeders, or is that going to be a permanent thing? Do you know? Yeah, because I'll start going down Broadway, because, you know, I didn't know it was there about a week or two ago when I was going to Myers, and I saw it, you know, and okay, but it's going to be there till winter, huh? Okay, all right, thank you.
Do you have any more questions?
Since the topic came up, so the speed bumps and the stop signs and the speeders, you know, fills almost every day Facebook. And so now we've got the group that says, are you crazy putting speed bumps in there? Because anybody, no matter how slow you drive, will need a wheel alignment after going over one, which is actually not accurate. But how are we doing on writing tickets for speeders that come through on people that run over stop signs? Have we made an impact with assigning certain people to this task? Have we actually written like significant amount more of tickets than we have in the past?
So in the past, one of the issues that we've had is, as Commander Miskus said, during the summer months, we have a limited amount of officers because everybody likes to take their vacation. So often find themselves answering calls or going call to call to call. I see Facebook and I see some of the comments on there, and I see how some of the people write, I seen them sit in a parking lot for hours. Well, our vehicles, our police cars, our cruisers, they are our rolling offices, as I like to call them. So after you do something, after you go to a call, if you have a report to do, you got to pull over and you got to do it. Now, reports can take anywhere from 10 minutes up to a couple hours, depending on what you had, depending if you had an arrest, right? So that takes out that officer, so now you're left with 5. That officer will respond to a call if need be, if it's an emergency call, but it's one of those deals where it's not always available, right? So we've had a difficult time enforcing traffic. Guys are still making, they're still making 500-600 stops a month. So they are still actively out there making traffic stops. They are actively enforcing traffic laws, but it's not as many. And I've joked around with this, but this is true, that I can put 12 guys out there and gals patrolling all day long for 12 hours a day, and it's still not going to put a dent in it. It is a national problem. Accidents have gone up like 40% in the last 3-4 years because of the way that people are driving. But what we are doing, the council gave us some extra money that allowed us to do some of these traffic blitzes, and we have identified some of these problem areas that we had. And these problem areas were identified, of course, number one, by the complaint of the people, because the people, and the residents of Merrillville are our biggest allies. You are our eyes and ears. We can't be everywhere. There's only 61 of us at any given time versus the almost 40,000, if not more, in this town. So you are our eyes and ears. We take that information, we take the information, those fancy signs that you see, the solar powered ones that show you your speed, those actually record speeds. They record a time of day that people are coming through there. So we've been able to gather some of that data, we've been able to gather the complaints, and we've been able to gather some information and accidents, and we kind of got an idea of where our real hot zones were. So we have about 25, 26 of them. And what we have been doing is we have been assigning units, and they've been going out there and they've been writing, you know, in a 2-hour span, anywhere from 20 to 40 tickets. But again, people are like, hey, there's still speeders. When are you guys going to do this initiative? We are doing it, you know. So yes, in a simple answer to your question, yes, we have had a significant increase in tickets and traffic enforcement.
So another question for me is the repeat offenders. Do you see a lot of the same people being stopped over and over again, or a lot of the same people being pursued? I know that, you know, we just had a very prominent case of a canine being gouged and ice pushed in and whatnot, and the guy walked out on a laughable bond. So this person is out again, and somebody else said he was just stopped in Lowell a few weeks earlier, and so this is a repeat offender, and because the judge didn't hold him on more than that, he walked and was able to do something else again. So do we see a lot of that in Merrillville?
Do you mean repeat offenders as far as like traffic violations or actual criminal offenses? Yeah, we do. That's the easiest way. We have repeat offenders, and unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it other than enforce the law. And you know, when we take them to county, if they get released, we have no control over that. If they bond out or the judge sees that they get a reduced bond, we don't control that end. Is there any other questions? All right, appreciate it, thank you. So next person up will be Detective Commander Vasel, and he runs our detective bureau.
Good evening. Like you said, we're not normally wearing uniforms, so some of the stuff I'm just going to go through some information so you guys can maybe understand exactly what we do. A lot of times we're probably hidden behind the scenes because we're not driving marked squad cars and we're not wearing uniforms every day. So every day I'm responsible to assign my detectives various cases that come to us from the patrol unit, which we work hand in hand with. These cases can go from very small thefts up to homicides or other different cases. It really varies every single day. There's no set day in any kind of police work. Every day is different. Every day, or say every month, we normally investigate about 60 cases, which actually is very high. It's not, most people think 60 cases isn't much, but every case can take from 1 or 2 days to investigate to certain cases that can take years. And I mean, it's not fun because sometimes you get stuck in these cases, but you know, it's part of your job and you get stuck in these very lengthy cases. But eventually normally we come to a result of either filing charges or doing something to hold the person accountable for the crime that's been committed. On any given day, last year we had numerous bomb threats happen day after day after day. And what that does, besides it ties up Commander Miskus' patrol unit, it also ties up all my detectives. Because instead of just having one detective assigned to a simple case of investigating it, this is an active threat. And that means a lot of times I have to have my entire detective bureau go out, which means, above all things, all the other cases that we're investigating now get put on the side. And now we end up putting all our manpower, which could include, you know, X amount of hours after time just trying to solve a crime, so that way we keep our children safe at the schools or any other place where actually the bomb threats happen. Not only are detectives doing case investigations, But they also, every time when we hire new officers, every single officer and employee that comes through Merrillville Police Department has to have a background check. And it's not a simple background check like most places do. If you go to Walmart, they probably run your name through a system, and 5 seconds later they find out if you have, these 2 or 3 things they're looking for, and then they're going to hire you, yes or no. But our detectives go through, they do a very lengthy background check, which could equal, normally it's 1 to 2 weeks probably. The proximity, we talk to people that you probably didn't think we were going to talk to in your life, whether it's sometimes your family members, your former bosses, whatever, and find out what kind of person you really are. So they do a very good job doing that. Each day, besides all that, there's like today, there's a detective assigned to be on call all day. So from 7 a.m. till 7 a.m. tomorrow, there's a detective. So if there's, for instance, say there'd be a shooting tonight somewhere in Merrillville, the patrol units respond to it, they're going to need a detective to come help investigate. That means one of my detectives is going to get called out, woken up from sleep like they normally do, and they're going to come out and investigate it until they feel it's up to stable point. They can investigate it the next day and come back work their normal shift from normal business hours. Sometimes that means they stay out all night. There's been times our detectives have been out for 20, 30 hours straight just investigating cases because there's nonstop and they have to keep going and going. And often a lot of these cases, if it's a bigger incident like a shooting, there's numerous detectives have to be called out. So it's not just one officer or detective working, 20 hours, it's 2 or 3. All have to work together until they, can solve a crime. Often, even though our detectives normally mainly work similar to what we do, we work Monday through Friday. We often, like us, they get called out on weekends. They also have to file charges. Every time somebody, like a patrol unit would arrest somebody and it's a higher crime, a detective often has to file charges, which means a Saturday, instead of relaxing watching college football, they're out there talking to the prosecutor or typing pages and pages reports and, spending normally the majority of their Saturday filing charges to make sure that we keep somebody incarcerated as much the best of our ability. We also have detectives assigned to our accident team, so they can assist with filing charges if necessary and helping investigate it. They're also assist our tactical team, so in regards to writing search warrants. I just looked at some of our stats from recently that include such as shootings, homicides, batteries, robberies, and stabbings. There's just name of some of the few I would list as violent crimes. That takes about 20% of my investigations for my detectives. And 20% might not sound like a lot, but like for incident, like one shooting or homicide could take weeks, months, and all the cases that were previously assigned to the detective are now put on the back burner because he has to follow every hot lead he gets, because that's what we're required to do. We have to follow every lead we get in homicide, so now everything else gets put backwards, which means we're scrambling to work extra hours to try and catch up and make sure we get somebody, like I said, held accountable and charges if possible. We also have a huge amount of domestics that we respond to. As Commander Miskus said, we go to these apartment complexes on a regular basis, and I think one of the biggest things we respond to is domestic disturbances. And I can't tell you the amount of cases that we filed this year, but it's astronomical how many charges we filed and then how many ones we have to look into in the Detective Bureau, and also things like sexual assaults and sexual molestations that could possibly happen at school and stuff like that. There's some of these cases can be very lengthy. Our Bureau uses different technology. We work with multiple agencies. We don't just rely on Merrillville Police and that's it. We work with federal agencies as well as other local police departments to use facial recognition. Chief already mentioned we use our license plate reader system and multiple other different technology systems in place to help us solve crimes. And normally, I know he'll mention it later, but technology is not cheap. Everything that we do, it costs a lot of money. And so a lot of times we'd like to do more with it, but we don't always have the ability to because we don't have all the funding for it. And that's just a nature of the game, but we like to obviously do our best to solve every case that we're given. That's a quick snapshot of what we do. But if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
How many detectives does your department have?
Currently, we have, I think, 9. But currently, we have 2 of them. There's assigned to, we call them TFOs, or task force officers. There's one assigned to the ATF. Another one of ours is assigned to GRIT, and GRIT is a version of the FBI. It's a local task force that works with other police departments. So sometimes if we have, say for instance, they had it, I think a year or 2 ago, we had like bank robberies or stuff like that that goes across state lines. It's a lot easier for us to use the assistance of these federal agencies and their ability to help us, because they can quickly contact another task force agent in, say, Wyoming or whatever, and they can quickly apprehend somebody or get information to us without us having to pick up and fly or drive, whatnot. We can a lot of times communicate with these, and they're very helpful in that aspect, or just apprehending criminals in general. They're just another tool for us.
So if you had this magic Make-A-Wish box and would say there is one software that would really free up a lot of my detectives' times or officers' times, is there such a thing, and what's the price tag?
There's no such thing as that. I mean, realistically, there's, I mean, above all things, technology is great, but it also requires a lot of times a lot of hard work. I mean, that is a big thing. A lot of times it's put in the hours after hours. It's putting in, you know, coming, like I said, called out 2 in the morning and being willing to work your case till its end. And it's, you know, it's like most people, they want to put in a little bit of work, but putting in all the work is where it's really required. So you can have all the technology in the world, it's not gonna save everything. It's helpful. I mean, it's like I said, it's a tool in the toolbox. It helps us solve things, but it's not the end all be all. Anything else?
In regards to the sworn officer division, the last thing I want to finish this off with is, within both the divisions, patrol and investigations, we have specialty units. Those specialty units consists of TFOs, task force officers, which are officers that have been assigned to federal agencies. And what this does is it allows us to take local cases that are state cases, and if need be, or if there is enough there, if there is a nexus there, we can move forward and make them a federal case. Also, federal agencies have a lot more money than us and a lot more resources, so they're always a great help for us. After the TFOs, we also have our Merrillville Tactical Apprehension Squad, which is our version of our SWAT team. Anytime there's some type of a hairy situation or any type of incident that requires more than just standard patrol, we notify them, they come out. We also have a K-9 unit, which I'm very proud of. We 4 dogs, 4 officers. We have, and they're in patrol. And then we also have our school resource officers. We have 3 school resource officers in our schools right now. They're also in addition, and some of them are from the Bureau and some of them are from patrol. And these are all built in. These are all specialties that we need to have, and we've built them into our patrol and our investigations divisions. Now, you get some places like LAPD, you get some places like Chicago PD, they have a whole division of just those specialties, which is nice, but we don't have that kind of money. Any other questions about our sworn officer divisions? Also, this is another portion of this, the sworn officer, just what it also consists of. You have your administration, which is the chief of police, the assistant chief of police, and our commanders. They're all responsible for overseeing and coordinating various functions throughout the police department, managing resources while establishing department goals and objectives. Our jobs as administrators is constantly changing. It's not like we have a set of things that we're going to do one day. We have a whole bunch of things that we're going to do, and then we come and we start working on them, and just as we're getting settled in and getting everything accomplished, something else comes along and kind of sidetracks us. So we're constantly having to evolve, we're constantly have to be flexible. It's unique. It's a different type of work. It's more mentally exhausting than it is physically exhausting. But this is what we signed up for, and this is what we do, and this is what we do to try and make things better. We also have civilian divisions. Our civilian divisions consist of animal control. Animal control responds to calls for strays at large, domesticated animals, dogs and cats, investigates reports of cruelty or inhumane treatment to animals, follows up with any legal action that needs to be initiated, and is also responsible for the impounding of animals. So anytime you see loose dogs or anytime you see a dog that that might have gotten away from somebody or got dumped, as we've been experiencing, animal control comes out, they investigate, they see what's going on, they make proper arrangements to either find the owner or take the dog, temporarily hold the dog, and then go to a shelter. Code enforcement. Code enforcement is one of our civilian divisions. Their job is to inspect site properties throughout Merrillville for any alleged or visible town ordinance violations. They also follow up by contacting the property owner to make them aware of the violations and suggest solutions. If need be, ordinance officers shall issue citations as well. We have 3 ordinance officers out on the road, and then we have 1 in the office. The one in the office does legal and clerical work that is needed. They're often almost all day, except for their lunch and when they're doing their paperwork. They're out scanning the area, seeing if there's any type of any violations being committed. Some, anywhere from tall grass to houses that are not kept like they should be. And what they do is they initially make contact with the residents or the property owners. And then after they make contact, they give them an offer for solutions. And if they don't come up with a solution or they don't fix the problem fortunately, we have to write them tickets. And that's what they do, up until the point where the problem gets resolved. Records division, that's what you would mostly consider secretaries. They perform all required clerical duties, make all required data entries, provide the public with requested police and accident reports. Anytime somebody calls the police department, they're answering the phone. They are providing any type of reports that you might need or impounds that need to be released or anything of that nature. So now that we're going to get to the nitty-gritty about funds, where does police funding come from? Police funding usually comes from local governments, state governments, and federal governments. Our budget primarily comes from collected property taxes. Over 50% of the general fund that Merrillville receives, the town of Merrillville receives, is allocated to the Merrillville Police Department. And again, I'm going to use it again, but yes, we are very expensive. This is something that, and I'll show why. So, this is our budget for 2023. How much? This year, we are operating on a $5.5 or $5.6 million budget. There's some discrepancies there from money that was encumbered from the year before. That's what our police department is operating off of our general fund. We also receive an additional $818,000 as a supplement that comes from the local option income tax. With both of those together, it gives us right around $6.4 million to operate. This is what we're getting from the collections of taxes and whatnot. Where does it go? Here's a chart that shows where our funding goes. As you can see, a majority of the money that we have goes to personnel. Does anybody have a guess about how much you think it costs to employ a police officer on average? So on average, it costs right around about $100,000 to $107,000 to employ a police officer, depending on their rank and whatnot. That includes uniforms, that includes insurance, that includes pension, that includes all that stuff. We often find that it's not just a salary. Well, it's not we often find it is the fact. We find that it's not just salary that we're paying for, but we also have to factor in vehicles. Vehicles are, we got to keep in mind that a new vehicle only lasts about 5 to 6 years in police work. We got to enter that into our, what it costs to have one police officer, right? So you get a vehicle, vehicles now are right around $48,000. So average lifespan, like I said, are between 5 to 6 years, depending. So what you're getting is right around $8,000 you got to factor in for vehicles. Supplies. When you think of supplies, you think of, fuel. Fuel is one of our biggest things. Fuel got very expensive for us. When we initially did our budget, it was much cheaper than it's kind of gone up and down over the year, and it's become very expensive. Any other thing, office supplies and whatnot, comes out of that budget as well. The other one is equipment. We talk about equipment, vehicles that we actually have to buy that year. The other ones we're kind of preparing for. Vehicles are the ones that we have to buy, that we have to buy them. Anywhere from 4 to 8 vehicles a year. We kind of got into a big problem with vehicles in 2020 because manufacturers stopped producing. Once again, COVID really hurt us, and we fell behind. So in 2022, Ford decided that they weren't going to honor any of our orders. And what they ended up doing, they told us that we can get orders for 2023, but the price tag's going to increase anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000. And it did exactly just that. So luckily for us, we have a council that's very supportive of us. And we were also lucky to get ARP money, the American Rescue Plan money. And some of that money was used to help us purchase cars, help us offset some of the additional bills. Because I kind of got ahead of myself on this, but if you take all these numbers and put them together, they're well over the amount that we were budgeted for. But I'll explain further as I go along. Repairs. Repairs got very expensive for us. We weren't able to buy new cars. So after a vehicle hits a certain point in police work, it's no longer very reliable. You end up dumping, on average $3,000 to $5,000 a year into it. And at that time, the vehicle's not even worth that, but you have no other option. So, let me pull this up here. We had, as I said before, I mentioned earlier, we were budgeted for right around $6.4 million. If you do the numbers on this, you're at 7.1 million is what it cost for us to operate this year. It was very expensive. Some of it was, like I said, ARP money has helped us out tremendously. Some of the other money that we used was non-reverting funds that we've collected over time from people buying reports, from people doing any type of background checks, from impound releases, impound fees, and whatnot. So we were able to make it work. But it was a shoestring budget, to say the least. One of the things that hurts us in a police department like us, as big as Merrillville is, we should have more than what we have, but funds are limited. That's beyond anybody's control. It's nothing that anybody can do at this point for it right now. I feel that it was very important for me to get this message out tonight because I see how much passion people have in some of these posts on Facebook. I see so much passion people have coming to these town council meetings. What I'm saying is, hey, come get into this fight with me and help me because I can use your help on this. I know the town council's hands are tied on getting us more money because it all goes back to when Merrillville was incorporated, the way that the tax everything was set up back then. We never caught up. Merrillville exploded and became so big, way bigger than any of the forefathers and foremothers ever dreamed of it being, but we never caught up financially, and that's a problem. So I often commend everybody because I'm not the only one that has this problem. Everybody's working on a similar budget. So we're always looking at different avenues and different routes to try and get more money. So to make matters worse, we get these unplanned expenses. And this is where a lot of that extra ARP money came in. Overtime. 2023 was absolutely horrible for us for overtime. We had unexpected illnesses, unexpected injuries, unexpected investigations. As Commander Vasel said, when you have some type of a major crime, you have to scramble all your detectives out there, especially a homicide. Everybody's familiar with the first 48. It's pretty important that we start picking up whatever we can in order to put these cases together. Just to give you an idea, on average, you're at about $5,500 a day in extra overtime when they're doing these investigations. Because it's not just one officer, it's several detectives, and they're not working 8 hours. They're working a lot more than that. So this is what really hurts us, is these unplanned expenses. Not too long ago, I think a lot of people seen, we had an incident where we had to use our SWAT team. We had a barricaded subject in the house with a potential hostage. So what we had to do is we had to scramble our MTOS out. We were out there for approximately 5 hours, and for that 5 hours, we were right around, $3,500 is what it cost us. Unexpected things that we never anticipated on having to pay out, but we had to do it. It has to be done. We can't tell people, I'm sorry, we don't have it in our budget. We just have to do it. And then we have to manage a way to make it work, right? One of the other things, replacement of equipment. Like I said, vehicles, they don't last very long, 5-6 years. That's all we get out of them. They're running nonstop. About the 80,000 mile mark, they got to go. And for the most part, we're prepared for it. But sometimes you have catastrophic failures that we weren't prepared for, like where a transmission or in a motor will go out in a vehicle and it's 3 times more than what the actual vehicle is worth. At that point, we're stuck. We got to try and find a different option. We got to try and find a different car. Accidents. We've had a couple accidents where our cars were totaled. We didn't anticipate that. Yeah, we get paid some money in insurance, but the insurance doesn't cover, they usually cover just the vehicle. They don't cover the lights. They don't cover all the equipment that needs to be installed into the vehicle when we're upfitting them. So we end up eating that. And that equipment that you put into a car is right around $10,000 is what it costs us to upfit a vehicle right now. So that stuff gets very expensive. And we're not getting reimbursed for it. So what do? We have to take it out of money that we didn't anticipate on spending. And unanticipated failures, computers. Technology is kind of cruel. As nice as it is to us, it's also very cruel to us because some of the stuff gets outdated. Some of the electronics, especially, they just crash unexpectedly. They're out of warranty. What do? You have to have them. So what do? You got to make it work, right? And just an example, I'm bringing up our portables, our handhelds. These are the handhelds that we use, Motorola APX 6000. Does anybody have any idea what this one right here costs? Brand new, these are right around $6,600, right? So they have an actual service life. These have exceeded that service life. The radio and everything that we use this is something that's controlled by the radio frequency and whatnot is something that's controlled by the emergency dispatch center through the county. That was a consolidation that everybody in Lake County had to participate in. We didn't have no say. We no longer have our own dispatch center, so we have to jump on board and do it with what everybody else is doing. It's law. This year, we've decided that since, well, not us that's decided, but since these are all at their end of their service life, they're going to update, they're going to get new frequencies, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and they're looking at new radios. So I would say that, what are we at right now, Matt, as far as radios go? We got less radios than we have actual officers because some of them are broken, correct? So some of the administrators are no longer carrying radios because we have damaged ones, and just a little knob to fix, just a little washer to replace in these is $800. And I don't want to spend money on stuff that we're going to get rid of anyways. So we got a quote for our new radios. Again, one of those unexpected things, over $1 million to outfit our department with the new radios that are coming out. I panicked. I went to the council, I went to members of the council, I went to everybody. I said, hey, what are we going to do? We don't have this kind of money. So after doing some research and everybody talking together and everybody working together, we were able to secure a grant through a federal grant through Mr. Van's office. So we are going to be able to purchase these. If it wasn't for that, we'd be in trouble. But again, this is one of these unanticipated, unexpected expenses that we eventually had to pay. It's not like you can purchase new radios, like you could purchase a new APX 6000 because soon these will be obsolete. We're not going to have any use for them. But again, those are the ones that really hurt us, and those are the ones that are more common, that we see more commonly, and that we really don't, we just got to work with it, you know? In conclusion, I wanted to thank everybody for coming here. I'm glad that I had an opportunity to kind of give everybody a feel as to how we operate, what it costs for us to operate, why we're so expensive. More importantly, I'm here to ask everybody for help. Help us in this journey, help us in this fight to get more money for our police department, help us for more money for our town. This is something that I think as a group we can all work together. And that's about it. We have a little bit of we're going to do a demonstration. Our anticipated person that was going to be in a bite suit from the for our dog, for our canine tonight, couldn't make it. So what I'm going to do is you guys are going to get to see the chief get bit by the dog. So I'm going to get in this bite suit. Hopefully it fits me because it's not mine. So if you guys, if anybody has any other questions for me. Sure.
When you showed that pie at the beginning, I noticed the county had more than the police department. Do they service you in any way, and why do they have such a big chunk? And you've mentioned that you have needs, but how do you see a community helping you to meet those needs?
Unfortunately, that's an answer. I don't know why the county gets as much of our money as they do. That's perhaps a question for our town manager, or interim town manager, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you very much, Chief. Not because I'm paid by you all. Thank you for that, by the way, Mr. President. Merrillville has a remarkable situation in which you're getting a lot of value for the property taxes that you're allowed to raise. The chief had alluded to that. When Merrillville was incorporated, that was the time to put as much as you could in your levy as you could. You just didn't put enough relative to the way we've been able to grow. You wouldn't have known that then, though, either. That's why I think it's an impossible situation to be put in. The county has got a significant amount of revenue related to the solid waste district that it manages that we all pay for, even though we're going to do that ourselves. And they have an incredible police burden, which is including the sheriff's department. And they do have jurisdiction that's concurrent with our police department. I've dreamt that one day maybe we'd be allowed to let them only tax the unincorporated areas. I think there'd be a race to see who could join us, and because when they started to pay the real cost of having that, we do share the value of the helicopters, we do share the value of the crime lab, but as for the rest, our people are doing the job of policing you. So it is a bargain, and it is a curiosity of the property tax system. They just get all that money, but they also have courts too, and their property taxes support that, and a little bit of state aid for the judges to be paid. But that's really the truth of it. And it's going to sound like I'm blandishing my bosses, but they really do try to make those dollars not go as far as, they really try to make those dollars go as far as they can. You've had incredible growth here. So even as your levies grow, your share of having to pay for that declines. That's why you're only paying 20 cents, and that's why that levy is only that. I wish I had a better answer. I know it's more, maybe not as complete, but it's accurate.
Thanks, sir. One of the things from a police perspective that I can say about Lake County, anytime we have needed any type of services, the sheriff has been more than happy to provide them to us. He often offers us air support via the helicopter. 2020, when we had those civil unrest moments, he helped us a lot. He's helped us and Hobart a lot. So I can't say that we're not getting any help from the county, but we are getting, I mean, we're getting a lot. We do get a lot of help, whether the whole 25%, whether it's worth it. I think we can debate that one, but I can't say that we're not getting anything out of it, as Mr. Griffin said. Any other questions?
Chief, explain it. We are going to increase the size of the force next year by 4 officers.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. We've had this conversation numerous times with Councilman Bella, and he's been a big proponent of us getting to our number, trying to get us to our numbers. So right now we have, we're thankfully lucky to the point where we've been able to, it looks like, to add 4 more officers to our police force, which would bring us up to 65 officers. And 4 may not sound like a lot, but it makes a world of difference. That's 4 more officers that you could put on a street where you can have them working a power shift. Or that's 4 more officers that you can add to a crew and have assignments to each crew, whether it be traffic assignments, whether it be special assignments because there is a problem area. It's huge. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that.
No, I just took some notes. Also, can you mention how the tax increment financing districts have assisted the police department funding?
The TIF districts. So with the TIF districts, we were able to get extra, is that from the police? Yeah, the rolling, that's going to help us get more officers. That's where the funding is because, as you see, what we get won't cover it. So that's where that's coming from. Was it RDC or the other one for the vehicles? Yes. It's also including our vehicles. So that's also helping us purchase vehicles as well. And that's very important to us because, as you've seen, what we collected in taxes or in property taxes, it doesn't cover it. It doesn't cover it. We would have been in trouble. So we're very thankful for that.
And then could you please cover how the Board of Metropolitan Police Commissioners serve as a layer between the town council, or the politicians, as you say, and the police department? And also mention how well that's working, because I know we communicate often, but it's really about business.
Yes.
The budget and things like that. So the council doesn't get involved with operations at all of the police department. At least we're not supposed to.
Sure. So we do have a police commission. The police commission is essentially our bosses. They are the liaison between the police department and the town council. What their job is to do is to assign us. They're the ones that actually talk with the council and confirm things and get whatever it needs done. We never get direct orders as to how we run our police department from the council. It's been a great tool. We've actually added 2 more police commissioners than what we had in the past in 2020 or 21, I can't remember. And that's actually worked out for the better. You have more people on board, you get more ideas, and sometimes we're like, hey, we need this, we need to do this, we need to discuss this with the council. What are your thoughts with it? And often they're like, yep, we'll discuss it, but oftentimes what you get a collective there. As I said earlier, you know, the more the merrier. You get a collective of brains essentially that say, yeah, I get that, but hey, have you tried this? So this is often a really good tool that we have. It's our structure, and it's worked out. Is that it?
Simple mathematics. So your handheld was $6,600 roughly per each, right?
The old ones.
The old ones. So the new ones that you're not buying one off, but you're buying for the entire police force, which usually you would get quantity discounts, are evidently about 2.5 times as much as the old ones. So number 1 is there an alternate supplier to Motorola? Number 2 is, would that be something, since the county is initiating that, where they might give some funds towards our police department?
I wish. That's about the second portion. Yeah, I wish. But as far as Motorola, it's selected radios that will be capable of working with this with the frequency, and that's the ones that we're gonna have to get. And one of the big reasons that they got so expensive is technology has you know, it's always constantly evolving, and it's evolved. And these new radios that we're getting are going to have an LTE function, And what that basically is, you have cell phone service in your radios. It's not going to be used to talk as a cell phone, but what it's used is if you go to an area where you have no signal, radio signal, that LTE, the cellular portion of it kicks in, because these radios are all digital, they're all on a digital frequency. And being that they're on a digital frequency, we can use cellular frequencies or cellular service to be able to connect. But I wish there was a cheaper solution, and I almost feel like Motorola has a chokehold on it, but you know, the amount of money that they put into their R&D is second to none. They are the ultimate authority when it comes to radios. And that's just like with a lot of our police equipment. You would never imagine that it's that expensive, but it's expensive for a reason. It's got to be durable. It's got to last. It can't, it's you know, our laptops that we had to get, we had assistance from the, we had, in 2020, we had laptops that were done. We had them for almost 11 years, I think, 11 or 12 years, they were done. So we needed new laptops, and those weren't cheap. Those were like $4,400 a piece. And, you know, that's an unexpected thing that, oh man, I really didn't anticipate that we needed these, but looking at them, you know, Microsoft, I don't know how familiar everybody is with some of the software and whatnot in Microsoft and how exactly it works, but it comes a time where your Windows, you know how everybody, you got Windows, you got Windows 11, Windows 12, Windows, whatever version of Windows that you're using, it comes a time where they no longer support them from any type of updates or security patches. And new software comes out, it's no longer compatible with the systems, and you have to get new stuff, right? So our laptops, you would think that a laptop costs, and realistically speaking, you go to Best Buy and get a laptop for $400. You can get a decent laptop for under $1,000. You would never think that they'd be $4,400, but they have to be because they're in our cars where it's constantly driving, constantly vibrating. They have to be rugged, or those circuit boards inside will start cracking. You'll get maybe a year or two out of them. But everything is very expensive in the police side, and there's a reason why.
Who furnishes your gun?
Excuse me?
Who furnishes your gun?
Who buys them for us? The police department.
No, what brand, what company?
So the company so nobody ever buys directly from a gun manufacturer. They all go through a distributor. The one that we used last was Kiesler's because they are the ones who is the authorized distributor in our area for Glocks. We went with Glock pistols. And guns, that's another one. Guns have a life too. They have a service life too. After about the 10-year mark, you got to replace them as well. So, or else you're going to start putting a lot of money into, you know, overhauling them, new springs, new whatnot that you might need into them. But this time we ended up going with the Glocks. We replaced our SIGs. These were fairly cheaper and a lot less maintenance on them, and it worked out. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much. Thank everybody for coming. If you guys give me a minute, I'm going to try and get into this suit. I hope it fits me because it's not my size. I don't know whose size that is. Oh, boy.
So the canine demonstration will be over here in the carpeted area of the room. If you want to come over to the edge of the chair area there. Gladly. If you safe. Hopefully. You all signed the waiver when you came in, right?
going to do it anyway.
Yeah, just.
Oh, I see, okay.
Absolutely.
Commanders, thank you. I know this isn't your usual bill of fare, but it was good to have you here. Police liaisonships, you're going to be famous because you're going to be shown on our website. But I do appreciate what you do, and thank you for being here very much. I learned a lot. I didn't realize about the apartments and the hotel. The chief told me about the hotels. I didn't realize the apartments were such a source of, or frequent source of calls. Is it? But you made it clear. I didn't realize the drug thing. The prostitution was embarrassing. I had no idea, but a lot of domestics there, so they're really residents who are fighting. Huh? Sure. I get it. Good way to describe it. I also don't think they do the sound barriers between the walls like they should because they're keeping that cost down. Anyway, thank you guys. You did a great job.
He still wants me.
About 80 pounds, you got big.